Section 200! Find the hole in your front! Rapid! Fire! Go front!
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for picking up my video and watching it. This is my first YouTube video just surrounding anti-tank weapons, in particular British anti-tank weapons. If I get enough interest, I may well move on to doing United States, Russian variants, and maybe vehicles. Maybe we'll look at other things to do some talks about, and informative talks in particular. So with that in mind, we're going to be talking about British anti-tank weapons, shoulder-launched light anti-tank weapons, a bit about how they were made and how they came about, and the differences between the real counterpart and those in Arma 3. So we'll kick straight off with the ILAW, so the interim anti-tank or interim light anti-tank weapon. This came about in the late 80s by Saab Bofors, so the Saab, the manufacturer that used to make cars, still going in different subsidies. They're obviously involved with Scania and weapons manufacturing and different things. They also make the NLAW, or design the NLAW with Thales, but we'll talk about that in a little while. First of all, the AT4, the L2A1 ILAW, it's British anti-tank weapon, single use. It's unguided, 84mm rocket. It was designed to replace the M72 light anti-tank weapon, which is American. That's still in use today, but it was designed in the 60s and used all throughout Vietnam and various different things. But it wasn't waterproof. It had to be extended, so it took extra time, obviously making the soldier vulnerable to the very thing they're trying to kill, which is the tank or the armoured vehicle. It's most effective actually against fortifications or lightly skinned vehicles at its distance, or at its range, its max range, 300 to 400 meters maximum range, depending on what you're shooting at. 400 meters, you could quite happily knock out a BTR or a light skinned vehicle. Main battle tanks probably want to be 150 meters max in armor, because they're pretty hardy. What will happen if you shoot a main battle tank over 300 meters? You'll just do sort of amber damage to it in armor. So you'll knock all the modules down to amber, but of course you've then given away your position, so that the turret will just swing around and take you and all your section out with it. It comes in two warheads, two 84mm warheads, high explosive dual purpose, which has about 150mm of penetration. So you only want to be taking out soft skin vehicles with that, and it also has frag damage, so you can use it against fortifications and groups of infantry. That's about it. It's got a tracer element on the rocket, so when you fire it you can follow it to the target, white magnesium tracer element, the same as how a bullet tracer works. So a 5.56 tracer, it's got a magnesium or a phosphate on the back which lights up and illuminates, which you will see in just a moment. So we're going to acquire the BMP2, which is just out in front of us here at 228 meters or 224 meters. Let's just confirm that. We're going to select with the 3 key. It's the high penetration warhead, and we're going to aim down at the target and select the elevation, so 250 meters, and we'll aim slightly low, and this should destroy the target if I hit it. Firing. There you go, as you can see, a hole in one. Very effective, short range, but you're also making yourself very vulnerable. It's a recoilless design, so what that means is the energy is focused behind the round, and the waste energy is ejected through the back, creating overpressure or a backblast. So you do not want to be firing this thing in confined spaces, and you certainly don't want anybody stood behind you when you fire it. You need to be calling out your drills. Right, we will move on to the next weapon, which is the NLAW, and I will get this mess cleaned up so we don't have to listen to that, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, so we've got the NLAW. The next generation light anti-tank weapon, also designed by Saab Bofors, but in partnership with UK manufacturer Thales Air Defence UK for the British Armed Forces. It was designed to knock out Russian T-series tanks. Essentially, is what it was mastered around. It's a very easy to use system if you know how. A lot of people in Arma, this is one of my favourite anti-tank weapons. A lot of people don't know really how to use it. They don't know how to use the PLOS system and the inertial guidance and things like that. A lot of people I've seen point and shoot this weapon, you know, and just try and sort of free aim it. It's a missile, it's not a rocket. You know, difference between a rocket and a missile. Rockets are unguided, like the ILAW. This is a missile. It has inertial guidance. It has predicted line of sight, or PLOS. It can be fired inside buildings, in confined spaces, because it has a soft launch system. So the first ignition I will demonstrate for you. You can see the missile just as it leaves. It's slightly slower, then the main rocket motor takes over. So there's a low powered ignition, and then it fires it out the tube a few meters away, and then the main rocket motor takes over, taking it to the target. It has a 150mm high explosive anti-tank warhead. So what does that mean? High explosive anti-tank has got basically a copper cone inside the warhead. Upon impact, that turns into a superheated plasmic jet, which basically weakens the armour, or cuts through the armour, allowing the explosives to penetrate and destroy the vehicle ultimately. 2 attack modes. I'll just grab another one so I can show you. So grab another tube. Obviously it's a single-use weapon again, so each one has to be replenished, and you should always take it with you and dispose of it back at the base. Depends how hard you want to role play that within your unit. In the real world you would never leave anything like that behind, because the enemy could get hold of it and make booby traps and IEDs out of it. Such like in the Vietnam War, when the US troops would leave M72s behind, the empty tubes, the extendable tubes, the Viet Cong would put stuff grenades down inside them, pull the pins, keep the safety spoon squeezed, and then they tie them up to trees and pull them and attach them to tripwires. So when troops triggered the trap, the tube would descend on them, releasing all the grenades. You don't want that. You don't want IEDs being made out of them. So you always keep and retain your kit, the same as you taught in the real world. Effective range 800 meters. Can knock out an MBT, main battle tank. Weighs about 12 kilos all in, and can penetrate 600 to 700 mils of armor, 600 to 700 millimeters of armor. So that's pretty good. The hotkeys you'll need for this, as I was saying, the 2 attack profiles. Is the F key. You'll see in the top right hand corner where the fire mode selector is, that little square with the triangle, that little bar with the triangle is the overfly attack profile, and the solid bar there is the direct attack. So in direct attack the missile will fly directly to the target. In overfly it will overfly the target, and when it gets to the target it will explode above it, rendering anti-personnel type casualties. So that's an anti-personnel weapon for fortifications, overflying fortifications and walls and things like that. Do not put it in overfly mode when you are targeting main battle tanks, because you're not concentrating the warhead, or the warhead is not making direct contact with the armour, so you won't deal full damage and you will not destroy the vehicle. It is not the same as top-down. The top-down attack that we will talk about when we go on to the Javelin. It's slightly different to that. As I say, it overflies at a raised altitude. This costs about 20 grand, 20,000 Great British pounds. The ILAW that we just did costs about 500 pounds, 450, between 450 and 500 pounds, I believe. So these are two relatively cost-effective systems for a guided anti-tank guided missile, an ATGM, which is what this is. It's a guided missile, it's a guided weapon. It's very cost-effective, and we'll talk about the Javelin, but the Javelin's into the hundreds of thousands of pounds. So this is certainly more cost-effective, and it's just a great weapon. First of all, we will acquire a static target, so we'll pick the furthest T-72 there away, which is at 645 metres, so 140 metres off of our maximum effective range. So we're getting towards the edge there. We'll press the T key, which will acquire the target's distance, as you can see as I come down there, which is a laser range, basically, a laser range plotting. And you see it appears in the bottom of the scope. Place the reticle on the target, T, 645 metres. That data gets sent to the missile computer, and when you fire it, the missile will make the adjustments for the elevation wind for you, and fly to that range. You need to keep obviously pointed up until you fire it, and once you fire, it's fire and forget. So. And as you can see, it's destroyed an T-72 main battle tank, 600 metres. What I'll do is I'll get a moving target set up, and we'll look at the predicted line of sight and how that works, and we'll go through that. Okay folks, here we go. I'm going to be showing you the predictive line of sight capability of the NLAW, and I'm going to be tracking it for 3 seconds whilst holding the tab key and then pressing the fire button. I'm going to wait till he gets out in front of us here, so he's more perpendicular, so it helps with my swing. There we go. One smooth motion straight across, and you will destroy your target. That's it, that's the predicted line of sight, that's the NLAW. We'll now move on to the Javelin. Okay folks, so I've picked up the Javelin, and we're going to be taking out the remaining T-72 just down there. First thing to note is the hotkey with this is for binding it, binding the command launch unit, which is this device here, and the Javelin tube is Shift and B for the 3CB mod anyway. This particular anti-tank guided missile was designed in the US. It was designed by Lockheed Martin, I believe. And it was designed around about mid-1996, 1997, with the aim of replacing the M47 Dragon, which was a tow missile, so tube-launched, optically tracked, wire-guided. So wherever you pointed the optic is where the missile would go, and you could obviously move the missile. I'm sure you've all played Battlefield or something, or even used it in Arma. It could be shoulder-fired, but to be accurate, it needed to be deployed on its own collapsible bipod. So it had a little bit of a drawback. It wasn't fire and forget, obviously, like this is. So this is soft launch as well, but it's got an infrared guidance, so it homes onto heat. Okay, so the heat of an engine or whatever that might be. This thing will take out battle tanks, main battle tanks at 4,000 metres. It will take out low-flying helicopters. It's got a 127mm warhead, tandem charged heat, so tandem shaped heat, high explosive anti-tank warhead. What that means is the first part of the missile explodes on impact, taking out reactive armour, which we spoke about earlier on. The second part then obviously goes through and destroys the vehicle. Top-down attack, which goes up and comes down like a mortar on top of the tank where the armour's weakest, and direct attack, which flies directly to the target. This thing obviously was used out in Afghanistan more recently, the Iraqi conflicts. In Afghan, obviously there wasn't too much to worry about in terms of tanks, but it was used against fortifications, buildings, groups of enemy, that kind of thing. So it's very, very durable, very multi-purpose in its approach. Costs 140 grand though, so it is rather expensive. As I say, talking about Afghanistan, there was a shortage of these things for the British Army in the early to mid Telek operations, Herrick operations, Telek's Iraq. So the early to mid Herrick operation, there was a shortage of these missiles. There was a shortage of people trained to use them. It's a one use, so once it's fired, the command launch unit on the side there comes away, and then a new tube must be mounted, again retaining that tube until you get back to your patrol base or whatever it might be. This can also be used on its own, I will show you, as a thermal optic. In Arma 3 it occupies the binoculars slot, Javelin CRU, and it can be used as a thermal optic on its own. You know it's on its own because it's got that big red cross through, so you can't fire anything obviously. Shift B to bind it, as we spoke about. You'll then aim down the sight. Looking at the information available to you, on the right hand side you can see it's in direct mode, so we need to put it into top down attack. Always fire it in top down attack for main battle tanks. Don't fire it in direct mode unless you really need to, because there's more chance it's going to hit something on the way. It flies quite a low profile. Wide field of view and narrow field of view on the numpad plus and minus, and then the November key, the N key on the keyboard to go into the thermal optic. So you've got white for hot and black for hot. So that's black for hot, that's white for hot, and that's the day sight there. So go on to white for hot. Sorry, there we go, and we'll press the tab key. You'll see the reticles change, the tone will change, and the seek lights will come on in the top right corner. When it is locked, you'll also get a solid crosshair. You'll then be able to go through your drills, clear backblast, firing, switch to the day sight so that you can see, and there you go, the vehicle has been destroyed. A very, very effective weapon. It will track moving targets. You need to move with the target while you're tracking it, and then once you fire, it's a fire and forget. You don't need to maintain sight of the target at all. I hope this has been a useful video. Please give us a like, give us a comment on how we could, if I've got anything wrong or if anything else you'd like to see. As I say, I'd be more than happy to do a similar video on US, Russian weapons, tanks, whatever it might be. Whatever takes your fancy. Come over and check us out at 2 Mercian. We'd love to hear from you, love to play with you. Join us on TeamSpeak, join our Discord. The website's in the intro, it's also going to be in the description. See, with everything going on with the coronavirus at the moment, take care, and hopefully you'll see some more videos from us and the 2 Mercian Regiment very soon. Take care.